Hello, my name is Carter Canali, and I will be doing a rhetorical analysis on Blake Gopnik's article, The Praise of Art Forgeries. My title for this video is The Flip Side of Art Forgeries. So let me share my screen. Okay, so Blake Gopnik's article was written on November 2nd, 2013, and it's an article from the New York Times. So let's think about what the definition of art forgery is. Art forgery is when someone sells or to a degree plagiarizes another artist's work and claim it as their creation. So it's basically like the artist taking credit for another person's work with it's basically taking the author's credit, the artist's credit without saying that it's really their work and not theirs. So let's think about his message and audience awareness. So in Blake Gopnik's article, his point is that even though forgers are doing something against the law, it can still be seen as artistic or impressive. So he's basically saying that even though art forgery is against the law, that it shouldn't always be seen in a negative way. Like it could still be seen in a good way, as in someone taking someone else's artwork and maybe like adding things to it that may have been better than the original artist's thought. Some forgers study the original artist's work in such detail and even get inspired to learn the way they make art. It all comes down to the method or style of art and not just the person. He used an essay from Alexander Nagel to further establish his point. So he's basically he says that Nagel argues that forgery is a concept that barely exists in the Western art before around 1500, when the art market was invented and a new cast of players who came to be known as dealers, collectors, connoisseurs, and forgers was born. Before that moment, a copy could stand in a perfect well for an earlier work of art, so long as it transmitted the same essential content, as this Nagel put it, and could fill the same religious or commemorative functions. And then he also says here that he said it was considered utterly normal to copy the Greek statues of Praxiteles and Polycletus, even while altering them. Patrons wanted access to the larger aesthetic ideas and ideals of their artistic geniuses. So basically, what he's saying here is that how it's normal for people to copy another person's art. So basically, it's basically saying it's like continuing on a legacy. So it's not just like a one-time creation where once it's created, no one ever can create it again. So these forgeries are a way to keep the spirit of their art alive, as I think he puts it. When I think about his purpose will be to persuade or convince others that forgery can be seen as art and it shouldn't always be seen negatively. Unfortunately, art can be seen as a way for forgers to show appreciation to the art, the artist, and the art style. So that could also that's a really good way of putting it, as you're basically saying that we should always kind of look at things from a different perspective, or like from another standpoint. That way we can kind of like see both sides of whether it being a good or a bad thing. So when I think about how Gottlieb wrote this article to his audience, it comes to my conclusion that Gopnik believes that the audience has a belief about forgeries and that they are considered a crime. And it suggests that they are probably artists or associated with the arts due to the fact that this is about art forgery. And Gopnik is an art critic. And they also could be affiliated with the law enforcement since art forgery is considered a crime. So, like people like police officers and security guards could be in this crowd as well. Gopnik also makes some assumptions in his article as well. So basically, what I said before, how he's an art critic, he's probably known about this type of stuff for a long time. And he also credits quite a few people in his work. He I said he quotes Alexander Nagel as an art historian, that he's giving credibility to someone who knows about art from decades ago and has plenty of experience, knowledge, and wisdom about art. And then another artist that he mentions in here is Andy Warhol. And uses the example to establish how most of his paintings have may not have been originally made by him. And one of the people are his way of showing his audience he knows what he's talking about. And these famous people provide building blocks for his point and argument. So now we get to his what kind of style of argument does Gopnik use? So to my conclusion, I concluded that he follows a Toulmin model. So for example, the reason I think it's a Toulmin model is because I use this example here and from paragraph 11, right? Um, about from what Alexander Nagel said, how he's saying that he offers a claim from Alexander Nagel about how he argues forgery is a concept that didn't really exist in Western art back around 1500, when the art market just started and that the dealers, collectors, connoisseurs, and forgers came into the same market. So basically, all these people came together in the same crowd for art forging. Like it's not just forgers; it's also connoisseurs, collectors, and dealers. And then he has this evidence where he says that Nagel said that a moment a copy could stand perfectly well for an earlier work of art, so long as it transmitted the same essential content and it could fill the same religious or commemorative functions. So his evidence is basically saying how he uses what Nagel says to basically explain how as soon as a copy could like look exactly the same or at least similar enough to the original, it could fill the same feelings or spirit of the person who sees it as it would if it was the original. And then there's also he has his explanation of evidence. He explains from Nagel that when something is copied, the new version felt almost the same as the original did, since they have the same appearance, model, or inspiration. So this Toulmin model is what he uses to construct his argument about art forgery not always being seen as a crime. And then even though his argument itself doesn't really include a lot of pathos, there was one line in particular that stood out to me as it could be considered pathos. It's this line right in here, uh, here where it says, "Forgers can even be an art lover's friend." That's such a very he uses like a bit of a emotional or friendly tone. He's basically it's a bit more relaxed or happy way of explaining how forgers can connect with those who love art. So he's not like using like a word like partner or ally. He said friend. And usually friend is a bit more lighthearted. So it's not so he's probably not as serious with this sentence here, but he is pretty serious in most of his other sections of his argument and article. And then we get to his what he uses for logos. So for instance, in paragraph 6, in the last decade, reported revenues from the Chinese auction market have expanded ninefold, now higher than those of its American counterpart. Records have been set for Chinese masters that compete with the West's already inflated prices for Warhol and Picasso, if such records even end up holding, given some buyers who are refusing to pay because of doubts about authenticity. So he's basically telling us that the secondary market in China's revenue makes it hard to ignore the increase in forgery sales of original artists like Warhol and Picasso. And the sales have expanded ninefold, which is like 900% in the last 10 years, which is quite a huge increase. And then also in paragraph 5, right here, he's basically saying here that we may also want to bless forgers for helping to tame our absurd art market. If speculators eventually are scared off by the danger of being stuck with fakes, prices may fall. So basically saying that all forgers came to the market So that all the forgeries came into the market caused the original authentic paintings to fall in price due to uncertainty of having a possible fake sold as original work. So basically, he's saying that like art forgeries are ways to keep art sales from dropping too low, even though the original art itself may decrease in price as well. And then we have his dubious rhetoric or fallacies. And there was one that stood out to me in paragraph 13, which is let's see, what did I say for this? Okay. It says here, you can never tell and weren't supposed to know that um here it is. You can never tell and weren't supposed to know how much of any of Warhol paintings have actually been made by him versus by some acolyte in his art factory. So this means that he's basically saying that Gobnik is basically saying that for Warhol that he's basically hiding a secret, and it's basically hiding like a secret, and it can definitely raise some questionable questions or thoughts in people's minds about real versus fake Warhol work or any artist in general. And then we get to his tone and language. So for his tone, Gottmik's tone is very open-minded, and Gottmik gives a new side to art forgeries as not just seen as crimes, but also as a method of art appreciation. And he's not completely given a negation to forgeries, and he does not say that forgery should always never be allowed. So the that this in his article, what stood to me was right here in this paragraph too. But while forgery is very clearly an economic crime, it may not always be an artistic or aesthetic one. So what he's basically saying here is that he's basically, even though he understands that it's wrong, he doesn't view it as completely wrong. So with all this gathered together, Gopnik believes that art forging has a positive side despite it being something morally wrong. And along with the other things besides art, we should always be open-minded to whatever situations or places we find ourselves in. So that was my rhetorical analysis on Blake Gopnik's praise of art forgeries. Thank you.